Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Future Now, Testing Trends to Expect in 2022. Before we begin, I'd like to cover 3 housekeeping items for our viewers. First, at the bottom of your audience console, you'll find a number of widgets for questions and additional resources. When you have questions for the presenter during the webinar, click on the Q&A widget and submit your question. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation, and if we run out of time, we will get back to you via email. Second, if you need any tech support during the webinar, please use the help option. Third and finally, a copy of today's slide deck is available in the resources section at the bottom of your screen. We will also email you a link to the recording of this webinar within the next few hours. With that, I will introduce our presenter for today, Eran Kinsberner, DevOps Chief Evangelist and Senior Director here at Perfecto by Perforce. Eran, thank you for joining us on today's webinar.
Thank you, Shelby. Super excited to be here and actually try to ramp up 2021 as we are facing, some future trends and some exciting advancements in technology expected in 2022 and beyond. What I'm planning to do in this webinar is walk you through a few of the, I would say, most recent changes that are happening both on the website but also on the mobile side that in my mind are crucial for you guys, practitioners, to understand and be familiar with as we enter 2022. So I will start this session with the spotlight on web testing, then move to the mobile, and if time permits, I'll do my best for that to happen. I will conclude with a short demo just so you see something that is not part of the agenda but still growing its importance. So I'm obviously going to do my best to end this webinar with a demo, so stay tuned. As Shelby mentioned, I won't repeat who I am, just encourage you to keep the conversation going after this webinar, if you like, via Twitter, LinkedIn, through my blogs or other channels as well. I am active almost on any available channel. So feel free to continue this conversation also after this webinar. As I mentioned, I'm going to start with what's happening in the cross-browser testing angle, because a lot is happening. If up until, I would say, even several months ago, the landscape was mostly Selenium with some rumors and some early adopters of technologies such as Cypress and Playwright. I think that we are closing 2021 with a very clear cut between 3 types of cross-browser testing technologies, Cypress being the early adopter, most adopted technology or framework by major enterprises that I engage with almost on a daily basis. Playwright and Puppeteer, which are being originated from the same team, started at Google, developing Puppeteer, and then moved to Microsoft, which now owns Playwright. Both are open source. And Selenium, obviously, everyone knows. But what you see, across these 3 types of technologies, which actually segment the cross-browser testing landscape, is that each framework or each family of frameworks kind of uses different technology. WebDriver is the technology behind Selenium and Appium. Selenium 4 was the recent release that was launched in October. And it's fully W3C compliant, still running on the WebDriver protocol. Same goes with WebDriver IO. Playwright and Puppeteer are using CDP, the Chrome Debugger protocol, to drive all the actions and get full control across multiple browsers. Puppeteer just supports Chrome. Playwright, which is based on CDP, actually supports all the other families, including Firefox and WebKit Safari, and Microsoft Edge, which is kind of an incarnation of Google Chrome. Cypress, on the other end, is definitely a unique technology. It's JavaScript-based, which support also for TypeScript and Cucumber through different libraries, but it's unique in the sense that it runs on the browsers that you're actually, working on. So if you are a developer implementing or writing a new feature for your web application, Cypress is perfect tool for you because it runs on the exact same environment and allows you to get full DOM snapshots, real-time debugging, logs, and whatever you can think of. And by the way, it's also connected somehow to the CDP, so you can get CDP insights or inputs from the Google Chrome protocol also to Cypress. And oh, by the way, it's, as part of Selenium 4, Selenium 4 also can leverage the CDP capabilities. There are different, I would say, trade-offs between the different types of browser families. It's at the eye of the practitioners to choose whether, the flakiness is going up or down between the three types of technologies. In my mind, and I have experienced actually all these types of technologies. I'm a practitioner, so I actually use Cypress, I use Selenium, I also use Puppeteer and Playwright. I think that if you are using best practices, if you are properly debugging and creating your test code, I don't think that the methods and the way that these technologies are built should be the main root cause of a flakiness in your test case or stability. Obviously, there are contributions of the architecture of these frameworks that sometimes can impact the stability and even the performance of the test cases, but it's not the only thing. I do think that the execution speed is something that Cypress leads by because it runs on the browser, in opposed to other client-server-based frameworks such as Selenium and Playwright or Puppeteer. So the execution speed and the performance of Cypress is by far much more superior than Selenium and others. On the other hand, Selenium and Playwright do have full browser support, and Cypress does not support, as of today, the WebKit Safari. So again, as I'm just convincing you, there are trade-offs between each and different technologies. But as we close 2021, these are the top frameworks if you are producing, developing a responsive or a progressive web application today, or just a simple web applications. These are your top selections that you need to consider, and I strongly recommend to stick with these. These are led by massive communities, a lot of code samples, a lot of documentation, full support, a lot of cool features and roadmap, as I'm soon going to show you, that are coming on these frameworks, which is not the case with other niche or smaller driven community frameworks, which are not on that slide. Just a word on, I recently attended a session led by a principal software engineer from Microsoft, who actually is part of the Playwright team. And what he presented is how Playwright gets its unique benefit of driving all the commands and getting full coverage across, browsers. And it's also driven by this CDP, the Chrome Debugger Protocol. But as you can see, with the fact that Playwright is built on top of CDP, it gives the framework super enhanced capabilities, such as getting the network control, meaning you can get HAR files and other information. You can get full visibility into the GUI, rendering engines, security, almost anything, any widgets, any gesture, anything that you want, and you can do on a local browser, you can almost do with Playwright. It's still the youngest technology, but it's growing. Microsoft is putting a lot of emphasis on this technology. So definitely, if you are looking at 2022, that's probably one of the next growing frameworks to choose from. But still, from my own personal recommendation, if you do have a working environment for cross-browser testing today that is based on Selenium or Cypress, on both, and you are satisfied with, there is no significant reason here, when I will soon touch a bit about the comparison, but when you are just looking at the core differences between the frameworks, there isn't really a shiny feature of one that you cannot live with that will require you or make you switch from Selenium and Cypress just to Playwright, and vice versa. If you have something that works for you today, keep using it, but just be familiar that there are alternatives going, and Playwright is the new kind of vendor or solution that is going out in the market. Cypress, as I mentioned, is unique in the fact that it runs in the browser. It allows developers to debug real time, to run very fast, to get full visibility into the DOM tree and all the elements that are being added as part of the development. Cypress comes with tons of plugins. So if you want to do functional testing, if you want to do API testing, accessibility testing, visual testing, testing in the cloud, Perfecto has its unique SDK, so you can actually develop JavaScript or TypeScript with Cypress, upload them to the Perfecto cloud, and run it across multiple browsers at the same time, in parallel, at scale, across different geographies and screen size and resolutions. So Cypress is a very powerful technology, and this is the current state. What's coming in Cypress, it's also very, very exciting. Currently in mature beta, Cypress is already working hard on what they call component testing. Component testing, as Amir from the Cypress engineering team, and also my friend Gleb that I work closely with, who used to be the VP of engineering at Cypress, are the ones behind this cool feature. And what's unique about component testing, which you cannot actually find in Selenium today, is that it's the middle layer of functional testing that connects unit and integration testing. As you can see, it just covers a subset, a component, as we say, a subset of the framework, sorry, of the web implementation, the web application, and allows you to get some kind of a mix of end-to-end and integration testing on a subset of your application, and that's very cool. And it's quite easy to get started with. So basically, just to get started with this early access of component testing, what you need to do is to actually run Cypress like you do npx Cypress open. If you do it with Perfecto Cloud, it's a different command. But basically, if you're just doing the local Cypress, you will run it with the OpenCT, that's the component testing module. And with JavaScript, you will just define which area of your application under test is, the component. In this case, you're going to test a to-do list section of component of your application. And this is what kind of allows you to segment subsets of your application and just do much more robust testing, which is one level on top of unit and one level maybe below of a full end-to-end testing. It doesn't test the full-blown application. It tests a subset of it, but quite a significant one. So component testing is one of the big things that are coming to Cypress. Again, you can start playing with it already today. Looking at 2022, obviously this is going to be a GA component feature of the framework, which will allow you to expand your test automation coverage across multiple browsers and functionalities. As I mentioned, you can also do everything that I just said and run all the test cases in the cloud. This is just a link to the documentation. If you do want to start scaling your Cypress tests with JavaScript or TypeScript, the only thing you need to do is obviously be a customer of Perfecto and then install this SDK through the npm install Perfecto-Cypress-SDK. This is being maintained all the time by Perfecto, which means you're not just running Cypress in the cloud, you're running Cypress in the cloud across all the multiple browser configurations, including Windows 11 that was just supported, all the beta versions of Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and once the WebKit from Safari will be supported by Cypress, we'll obviously extend the coverage also towards Safari. As I mentioned, component testing is between alpha and beta stages today. Cypress is coming with a Cypress Studio, I would say early next year. I will soon say a word about what Cypress Studio means. And I think the most two important things which are in a work in progress stage for a while now and expected hopefully to be released in the next couple of months is the iframe support. This is something that Selenium does support and Cypress is still lacking the support for, and the WebKit Safari, which is also in the roadmap for Cypress. So for 2022, if you want to summarize what you need to know, keep an eye on what's happening with Playwright. If it's interesting and covering something that you're not covering today, look from a Cypress standpoint at the component testing capabilities, the Cypress Studio, and hopefully once WebKit Safari and iframe are added, you can enjoy the extended coverage as well. A word on the Studio. So Cypress Studio, Selenium has the Selenium IDE, which is now as a plugin for Chrome and Firefox, Mozilla Firefox browsers. What Cypress also created is what they call the Cypress Studio Test Recorder, and this is an auto-generated, low-code, no-code, if you like, tool that runs, again, in the browser, and you can actually, as you can see on the left here, this record button, you can click on it, and whatever actions that you are doing on the browser web application under test are being translated or created in a JavaScript testing type on the left hand. Then you can go back to your IDE, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, whatever, and you can modify, edit, and add more logic or assertions if you need. But basically, this is a nice ramping up tool that Cypress is giving the community to simply get started with Cypress testing. So this is coming very soon. As you see marked on this screenshot, it's in beta. If you are, again, looking at 2022, I'm assuming in Q1 or so, this will probably be announced as GA. Cypress are moving quite fast with their roadmap. So another thing to look out for in 2022. Something that was released just recently, and since we are about to close 2021, I think that a lot of these capabilities will be relevant for you in 2022, and that's the Selenium 4. Selenium 4 was worked on for many, many months, or actually even years now, since the Selenium 3 was out in the market. And thanks to Simon Stewart and his team, Simon actually stepped down after 14 years or so from leading the Selenium project, but left a very good heritage behind him, and this is the Selenium 4 latest GA. Selenium 4 comes with a great set of capabilities. One of them is a new grid architecture. So if you are doing DIY and working with a Selenium grid locally, you now have a better way of managing these multiple browsers. If you want to throw the grid away and move to the cloud, what Perfecto is implementing, Perfecto is actually providing a Selenium grid of our own in our clouds across multiple geographies with all types of different browsers and operating systems, both web and mobile. So if you are not using a cloud, the new Selenium grid is a good replacement to what you are currently using on, on-premise. If you want to ditch both and use a cloud service, you can actually use Selenium grid of Perfecto in our cloud and use, as many browsers as you like on demand. The next feature that was released in Selenium 4, and if you're now editing, auditing, and modifying your test automation scenarios, this is one of the key things that, in my mind, attributed a lot of the flakiness, negativity, if you like, around Selenium, and that's the relative locators. A lot of element locators keep changing across different applications, sometimes proactively by the developers, and this is one of the attributions of flakiness in Selenium code, whether it's Java, JavaScript, or other language bindings that comes with Selenium. You can see all of these bindings here: Java, Python, C#, Ruby, etc. It doesn't matter the language. If you are dependent on an element and it either gets changed, or you have multiple types of these elements on the same page, and you're unable to identify through the script on which element to click or swipe or whatever action you're trying to do, this is what fails your automation scripts. With Selenium 4 and relative locators, you can very clearly specify via code which element you want to interact and engage with. For example, in this case, you can actually specify, as a relative locator, you want to find an element, either, above something, like here you can see above the password field. So if you, let's say you have two types of elements called input 1 or input 2, whatever, you are going to specify in your script, in this case in Java, that you are referring to the element which has a tag name of input, which comes above the password field that you were testing in the previous action in this script. So being very specific with relative locators, this is one of the biggest enhancements in Selenium 4, and it's going to help a lot of developers and practitioners to build better and more robust and reliable scripts. Obviously, I mentioned earlier the Chrome debugging protocol integration, allowing you to do things like emulation geolocation, getting accessibility audits, PWA, everything that comes, through the CDP. If you are familiar with the F12 developer tools on your Chrome browser, a lot of these things are being driven by CDP, and this is now embedded, integrated into Selenium 4. And you can see here, you just need to import the Chrome driver DevTools, as you can see here. And by doing so, you can actually use the geolocation capabilities by using coordinates like latitude and longitude, etc. So these are few enhancements that you get with Selenium 4. Windows and tab automation, switch to window types, working with different tabs. By the way, this is something that Cypress today is a bit limited. So working with multiple tabs and iframes is something that Cypress cannot do. Selenium really takes the coverage across complex web applications, websites with Selenium 4 to the next level. Obviously, Selenium 4 is W3C compliant, so if you have existing scripts in Java, JavaScript, or other language binding, you need to make sure that everything, if you are upgrading to Selenium 4, previously used attributes and capabilities have changed by name. So you need to audit and make sure that you're using the right keys, like browser name, browser versions that in the past were under a different name, and they were very specific to the browser vendors like Google, Microsoft, Mozilla, etc. So now everything is being consolidated under W3C compliance, and your script needs to adhere to the new requirements if you are migrating to Selenium 4. And I mentioned earlier the Selenium 4 IDE, again, also part of the Selenium 4 release, and it's now as a plugin to Chrome and Mozilla Firefox browsers. This is just a summary of consideration if you are debating between Selenium, Cypress, and by the way, I can easily add here Playwright because it's more or less the same. So just few considerations based on skill set, area or phase in your development cycle, flakiness, environment setup capabilities, coverage. These are just few of the considerations that you want to ask yourself when you are debating between Selenium, Cypress, and maybe even other technologies. Exactly almost in the middle of this webinar, after looking at the web, I think that the web cross-browser testing for 2022 is really shaping up to be very focused around Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, and Puppeteer, advanced capabilities, smart recorders of Selenium 4 and Cypress with the studio, new types of testing like the component testing, and additional plugins that are also being worked on around web testing for accessibility, APIs, visual, etc. This is how 2022 is going to look like, if you ask me, from a cross-browser testing perspective. At the end of this webinar, I might say what also, and maybe give a few more ideas on low-code, no-code, because it's also something that's going to impact both the web and the mobile. That's why I'm going to leave it to the end. Let's move and focus now on what's happening on the mobile front and what to expect in 2022. So from a frameworks perspective, as I just finished talking about the key frameworks of the web landscape, on the mobile front, it's also 4. I covered actually 4 frameworks on web. I didn't plan for that. On the mobile front, it's the same number. Appium leading the stack because it's cross-platform, Android and iOS. Espresso very focused on Android application testing. XUI test very focused on iOS testing. Flutter from Google being the newcomer, which is a new platform for both development and testing across multiple platforms, web, mobile, desktop, Linux, etc., etc. So I think that for 2022, the only change that you're going to see, Appium, Espresso, and XUI test are going to dominate the market for sure. Appium is already in a mature 2.0 beta as we speak. Hopefully, in the beginning of 2022, you will see an Appium 2.0, which is a very fundamental transformation of the Appium technology. But these are the 3 frameworks which are still going to lead the way from a mobile native and hybrid testing perspective. Flutter from a different angle comes from Google based on Dart as the development language. That's definitely a growing technology. If you're familiar with PWA, which I'm going to say a word very soon, Flutter and PWA have a lot in common from both benefits as well as, way of development. The streamlined development process is quite similar between building a progressive application and a Flutter application. Once I touch a bit on PWA and also on Flutter, I'll explain what I mean by that. But basically, Flutter is the new challenger in town for mobile testing, and I believe that 2022 is going to be the year of Flutter, growing fast. We'll see much more applications being developed by enterprise across multiple verticals in Dart. And obviously, from a testing perspective, the testing frameworks, including the Flutter testing framework, will need to evolve and meet the expectations, because if you cannot test properly, the technology won't be also adopted. You want to have a full-blown environment for both development and testing to really get the technology out the door in a solid way. I think that as of today, the Flutter built-in framework, which is just Dart, is not fully ready for prime time. It cannot cover all the different scenarios and complexities. Hence, people are still either using third-party libraries or just staying with the native applications for iOS and Android using the Appium, Espresso, and XUI test frameworks for their testing activities. Let's now talk a bit about what's shaping the application types today and in 2022. So as we are closing 2021, Google, after introducing a new type of applications called APKs, which is a bundle of applications, of Android applications, which can be suitable for a specific device in a specific geography, if you like. Again, everything is customizable by the developers. So APKs were launched by Google in August this year, actually being as a mandatory requirement for application developers. Any Android application that is being launched, new one, to the Google Play needs to be in the template or format of an APKs. With that in mind, Google also are introducing a new privacy policy with a new control panel for that, or a console. And this is the new thing that you as developers and testers needs to be aware of, because this is a mandatory requirement that Google is going to enforce during Q1 of 2022. This means any Android native or hybrid application that lives in the Google Play going forward will need to define and actually announce to the end users, everyone who downloads the application from the Google Play will need to justify or accept the specific set of requirements, permissions, capabilities that the application is asking for. In that case, to get the application certified by Google, Google is asking you to give the justification in this new console. You see, last month, Google opened a new Google Play console just for privacy policy testing, asking the developers to start uploading their pre-production applications to this new console, just to give them a taste of what to expect and what kind of fixes or changes needs to be made on the application front before they are going to be launched again with the new privacy policy in mind to the Google Play early in 2022. So this kind of new permission requirements is a new policy. You have the link here in this slide. I strongly recommend, if you are a developer on this webinar for Google Android application, you must. It's not a recommendation. Like APKs, it's not a recommendation. These are two fundamental mandatory requirements from Google for 2020, end of 2021, beginning of 2022, that you need to know, and you need to implement them as part of your application. So start looking into what is APKs, how you can convert your existing application to an APKs format, look at the Google Play new privacy policy, start certifying your existing applications through the Google Play console, the new one, and start declaring any permissions, any requirements, any capabilities that are really mandatory by your end users in this new file or privacy section. If there are things that are not being used by the application, simply ignore them or remove them from the application, because any redundancy will cause your application to fail to upload to the new Google Play next year. As I mentioned earlier, APKs is one of the new types of application that is growing. It's a mandatory requirement. It's rising. As you can see here, August 2021 was the due date for Google given to the developers to move all their application types, which were up until then under a format or extension of APK, to a new format called APKS, Android App Bundle. And if you haven't done it so far, you need to do it. Another growing technology or trend in the market, still led by Google, is progressive web. It's kind of a challenger for native applications and responsive applications. It's still a web application that comes with a full set of capabilities that are mobile friendly. For example, ability to offline cache the entire application so you can work without network. Registering your web application on a mobile device to get all the notifications, like push notifications, working with mobile sensors and contact list and location context and stuff like that. So it's kind of a native application, which is web-based, getting installed on your mobile smartphones without going through the Google Play and the App Store. That's what's being driven by Google. It's not new, but it's becoming a reality today. Many applications today are PWA by definition. Go to ebay.com, Twitter, Instagram, Tinder, any application that you can think of from multiple segments is now in a format of a PWA. You can see here just what you can do as an example. So that's an example of a progressive web Pocket Dex, if I read it correctly. And basically, the flow from a user perspective, opposed to a native application, if you think about a native application that you would typically use as a user, you'll go to the Google Play if you're on Android, or to the App Store if you're on iOS, and you simply install these native applications on your mobile phone. Here, you only work from the browser. You go to the browser and you add a shortcut or a link from the browser to your smartphone, like you can see here. You see, I went to the browser, I installed it through Add to Home screen, and then I see the new icon here on the right hand on the second image, and then I launched it, and I'm starting to engage with the application offline with a service worker, which allows me to get push notifications and engage with sensors, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how a new user flow would look like on a web application, on a mobile device, but a very rich one. And that's the story of PWA, which is emerging. iOS 15 was recently released, and I think that it's already changing some of the end user experiences with a new Safari user experience, with new types of capabilities, especially intelligent ones, such as accessibility and voice. But also, if you look at the camera now has a very rich set of contexts to scan for text and images and connect them to where you are geographically and get you more insights. So everything around us, especially on mobile, becomes much smarter, even with 5G. So iOS 15, together with, by the way, the next slide, which is talking about Android 12, are kind of retransforming the way we engage with our devices and the applications. And this is a very good segment or a very good opportunity for developers, especially with, in light of the previous slides of PWAs that are growing, APKS. On Apple, you have what we call app clips. These entire digital transformations are giving developers a new set of opportunities to increase the end user engagement. But for that, you need quality. For that, you need to test properly. You need to be much smarter in the way you are testing. And I think in 2022, the demand and the requirements from a test automation engineer and also any tester in our field will simply grow, because the applications around us are becoming much more complicated, and you simply need to think outside of the box. You need to consider more environments and environment dependencies that are impacting your application quality. And you can see here, for example, you're going to see on Android 12, which is already released with the new Pixel 6, right? On these devices, you see on-device search, such as app search, which come with a context, new widgets, quick tiles. So your application are going to fit in new tiles. Think about foldable smartphones, right? Foldable smartphones are also retransforming the way we engage with applications, because suddenly you can actually engage with 3 applications at the same time in the foreground. So recently, I've partnered with my friends at IBM, and the IBM team, together with Perfecto, created a best practice on how to test foldables, because we do see the growing demand, the growing complexity. Android 11 started the road for foldables. Android 12 has the built-in capabilities for foldables, including a Samsung emulator that comes with the SDK. So testing on foldables today is a superset of everything that you do today on an Android application on smartphones and Android tablets. Foldables is a new beast, right? Think about these 5 topics that I'm right now showing you. These are an additional set of considerations that you suddenly need to cope with when you are looking at foldables. And foldables is not a trend, okay? Let's be clear. Maybe 1.5 years ago, it was a trend. Maybe a few months ago, it was a trend. We close up 2021. Almost all of the major Android device manufacturers, including Samsung and LG and Motorola and Huawei and Xiaomi, I can go on and on, are launching the 3rd generations or even the 4th generation of their foldable smartphones, and it is a growing market. Apple are talking about a new foldable device either end of next year or the beginning of 2023. So it's going to be also an iOS thing going forward. So the bottom line here, if you are in the mobile testing space, everything that I've just told you about right now, think about it. Consider for next year also the addition of foldables to your test plan, because you do have a market there. You do have users who are expecting the exact same performance and accessibility and functionality of your application on these very expensive and unique devices. I said a lot about accessibility. I think accessibility testing up until quite recently was something that was either outsourced, done manually. I think that today the accessibility testing is not just something that is very, very critical, because it costs the business a lot of money. There are a lot of mandates across multiple geographies. In Canada, you have a specific Canadian accessibility requirement across the, all geographies. You have the WCAG, the 508, and the ADA compliance that are becoming a mandatory requirement across web and mobile applications. Any application that is out there on all browsers and mobile devices need to adhere to these strict requirements, and it takes a lot of time to do it. This is why test automation, accessibility test automation, is becoming top of mind. It's a business requirement, and you need to start. And what I believe in 2022 you're going to see is a much more significant shifting left of accessibility testing than we have seen up until today. I'm already working with many of our clients that are already implementing both mobile accessibility testing. Perfecto brings to the market 2 native scanners, one for iOS applications and one for Android applications. Together with the AXC by DQ for web, we are giving our customers a full-blown set of coverage tools for accessibility on web and mobile. We are also working right now with another vendor called eVinst that are also kind of transforming the way you can do accessibility testing on mobile native applications. So accessibility is definitely top of mind. It costs business the money. So for 2022, you need to put, if you are a web or mobile application developer and tester, this is something that you need to put as a priority to automate, to shift left, and do regression as part of your daily or at least weekly builds, because it has a lot of significance to the business results. That's just some supporting slide on how accessibility looks like on Perfecto when you're running the native scanners on a mobile device and on a web with AXC. So this is on the mobile phone. You can see here, you can get it through the Appium with native scanner to do mobile check accessibility audit. This is the new execute script capability that you add with Perfecto, and you get the mobile report. This is how you would do it on web with the open source AXC by DQ on a web application. We support it for both platforms. I think that prior to this webinar, my friend for many years, Joe Colantonio, said something about his expectation for me to touch things around low-code and no-code automation. And if Joe is asking me, I cannot say no. So this upcoming section is about my prediction and the trends that are going towards intelligent test automation for web and mobile, and actually both, including intelligent analytics, test impact analysis, and stuff like that, because this is coming. So let's move to this intelligent area after covering the web and mobile. What we have seen up until now, and there are already few growing vendors out there, and Perfecto is just one of them. Scriptless intelligent test automation is becoming an equal citizen as we are in the end of 2021. Everyone, if you would ask any practitioner today if he heard about something called scriptless or intelligent test automation, he would probably say, yes, we have heard, we are either considering looking into that, or we are already evaluating and doing proof of concepts. I think that this is a technology that is becoming ready for prime time, and I think that 2022 will be the year of intelligent test automation, where organizations will bake into the code-based testing technologies, also what we call scriptless, low-code, no-code automation, and this is going to be across functional, non-functional, and also visual testing. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future we'll also see accessibility testing driven by intelligent testing, such as scriptless. What you can see from a value add of scriptless test automation is that you can actually complement what you cannot do, or you don't have the time, or you have too much flakiness around with code. Think about the previous slide that I presented, right? Selenium and Appium and Cypress and Flutter. All these frameworks are code-based and require very sophisticated skill set by developers and SDETs, test automation engineers, and they have a limited amount of time and priorities. All these additional gaps and test automation, test scenarios which are not automated are a great opportunity for this scriptless technology in 2022 to be built and added or embedded into the CI/CD pipeline. This will obviously, such tools come with self-healing capabilities, smart and intelligent maintenance, and this is something that will reduce the flakiness, will allow you to do much more automation in a short amount of time. And by the way, kind of give a new horizon to your manual testers. The manual testers over the past few years have kind of been pushed by developers and SDETs to the corner. Obviously, very smart guys that contribute a lot to the quality of the applications, but since they are doing manual stuff, it always takes them too long, and sometimes they are not ready in time for the releases, and sometimes their voice is heard too late in the cycle. With scriptless, they can kind of bring their voice into the pipeline much earlier through automation that they can actually cope with and maintain. So this is what is coming in my mind and becoming a reality. Already today, definitely going to be much stronger in 2022. And if you want, I can give you an example of a Perfecto scriptless for web testing, soon to be also supported by mobile by Perfecto. But you can see that with scriptless, both SDETs and also test engineers, manual test engineers, can create, execute, and manage the reports across the entire set of scenarios. The Perfecto scriptless that we have is on-the-fly recording. You don't need to install anything, which means the business testers don't need the IT support. They can just go and through a SaaS solution. Many of the other scriptless tools out there are also SaaS. You either install a plugin on your browser, but you definitely don't need to install any massive desktop applications to do web testing. So it's fully compliant with Selenium. It's fully, providing you insights and debugging and logs, and it plugs into the Jenkins or other CI tools, so you can really be part of the entire CI/CD tool chain very easily. So that's why scriptless, in my mind, is one of the biggest promises for 2022, and also addressing Joe's question on social, scriptless, low code, maybe sometimes up until even no code at all. I believe that there needs to be some code that complements scriptless just to bring more advanced scenario support to the scriptless. And by the way, even with Perfecto scriptless, you can actually use what we call an SBEM, a Selenium-based extension module that allows you to really inject some JavaScript code and build some keyword-driven components to extend your test automation coverage. So scriptless is, in my mind, a big part of what's coming in 2022. This was easy to talk about on the web. For mobile, it's harder because mobile automation across so many devices, so many operating systems, so many challenging end user flows with biometrics and sensors and locations and permissions and you name it, right? It's very complicated. And now Flutter, which comes with a different format of applications, this is where scriptless for mobile, in my mind, going to be a huge break in 2022, allowing SDETs, developers, and business testers, in my mind, all of the team members that are part of the testing teams of a mobile application can benefit from a scriptless to mobile because it allows you to map and model an end-to-end application across all the different screens, debug it, and create very robust end-to-end testing scenarios that can run within the CI/CD in a very short amount of time. The benefits, as I mentioned, are the maintenance and the time to create. You can automate any mobile application, whether it's Flutter, React Native, or just native. It's allowing you to map the application, but also, and that's one benefit, the biggest benefit that I see is actually the changing over time. If a developer adds a new screen over time to the application workflow, it's easy for you to change by just moving one screen from one end to the other and have all the other components kind of auto complete the end-to-end journey quite easily. Think about a new screen added to your flow when you are writing code in Appium. It's going to be a nightmare for you to catch up and fix this new user and your end user flow. So mapping the application, maintaining it over time, creating tests very fast. These are just few of the things that you can do with scriptless web, scriptless mobile, and that's, in my mind, one of the future enhancements that are coming in 2022 that are going to change fundamentally how we are doing testing of digital applications. This is just a build-up of the previous challenges, if you like. The complexity is driven by many things, right? The load time and the stability of the mobile applications, the management of the locators, if you're using Flutter or React, etc., which sometimes are not exposing an ID or changing the IDs dynamically. It's hard to do automation of these things. Working with Appium and multiple operating systems that have different types of objects and elements. For iOS, they have the wheel pickers, and others, they have other types of controllers. So with scriptless, obviously, all of these things are agnostic, and the tools are just looking from a visual layer on the application. They are modeling the end user scenarios, and they don't really care. They use Appium. These tools are using Appium or Selenium, but they are not impacted by the code and these different low-level implementations of the technology, allowing them to really automate from above in a much more easier and robust way. Last but not least, and I hope I have just 2 minutes for demo, is the intelligent reporting. I think that what we used to call test impact analysis and intelligent test automation reporting is becoming a new reality. Okay, what we have seen over the past, I would say, few years is the continuous testing became a thing. Everyone is doing continuous everything, continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, and this contributes to a large amount of test data that is being generated almost on a daily basis. Think about millions of executions over a quarter, and you need to find the needle in a haystack. You need to understand what's causing a specific set of tests to fail, what is the root cause, what are the artifacts that you can use to debug and reduce the MTTR, the mean time to resolution. This has become a very massive pain on many organizations that are scaling up. With AI-driven reporting across multiple segments that we see in the market, especially with what we are building with Perfecto over the past 2 years, this is a huge contributor to velocity and agility of teams by allowing teams to segment specific failure reasons automatically, by filtering out noise, helping teams to deliver much more robust test automation at scale by showing them where is the noise and where are the actual bugs. Teams can move much more faster. In the short demo that I'm going to show you, I will show you live what I mean by an AI-driven reporting, but I think that, we talked about intelligent test creation. I think intelligent reporting is the next thing that is going to grow in 2022 with test impact analysis capabilities and also auditing of test cases, so you can really understand what's slowing you down from a testing perspective, what gives you the highest benefit, and on what areas of the application you need to focus the most to really delight your customers and release with confidence to the market. So keep in mind for 2022 and beyond, obviously, the AI-driven reporting is the next big thing that is coming on top of test creation and automation. With that, before we move to the Q&A, as I promised, I want to show you a short demo, and I will share my screen. And Shelby, let me know if you can see my IDE.
Looks good.
Awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to show you, and I haven't spoken a bit about virtual devices, but being in Perfecto, at Perfecto for almost a decade now, I used to talk a lot about testing on real devices and the importance of testing on real devices. Nothing has changed. You must test on real devices. You must validate everything that is working before you are releasing to production on real devices and on multiple devices, as I mentioned earlier in my slides, with accessibility and with performance and with functional testing on real devices, foldable devices, etc. But what we have seen over the past few years is that virtual devices, emulators on Android, simulators of iOS, these have grown to be very powerful and sophisticated platforms that you can actually use. Developers are using and are adopting that. As I speak with you today, I have many customers that are baking virtual devices into their software development lifecycle. They are shifting left the use of virtual devices earlier in the development lifecycle. SDETs are using virtual devices to create their Appium scripts earlier in the cycle before they're scaling them up and running regressions, on real devices prior to the release. So virtual devices are, in my mind, aren't new, but they're in a new format, in a new way of maturity that are contributing, adding value, reducing costs, allowing teams to be higher, with higher velocity. They can release with higher velocity through fast feedback earlier in the cycle because these type of platforms are cheap, embedded into the environment IDEs, allowing developers to test and debug earlier with confidence. So what we have done in Perfecto over the past few months, we have built virtual devices over real devices, and we actually are allowing customers to really enjoy the mix of both real and virtual in a single pipeline in the different phases of the software development lifecycle with the same framework. So in this example, what you can see here, I have an Appium script in Java, pure Java. And what you see here, I'm using an IPA file and an APK. I have also an Android application with an APK. And here I'm simply choosing, I'm using the tag of use virtual device as true, okay? And when I'm using, I'll just open here. When I'm setting the virtual device as true, this is where I'm going to use the iPhone simulator. You see here, this is the invoice application as a zip file, okay? And in this case, I'm using iOS simulator running on version 13.7. I can change the version here. And in this case, I'm going to only use a virtual platform in the cloud. This is for iOS. I also have something for Android. In Android, I'm going to use an APK. And you can see here, it's an Appium capability that we have added called use virtual device with a flag of true. In this case, I'm using Google Pixel 4 with Android 11 on the cloud. It's a test and G project, so I'm going to run in parallel both Android and iOS. Actually, I have an error here. I'm sorry. Something got updated on my environment. So I will not complete the demo of this virtual device here, but basically what I was trying to show you here is with the simple Appium capabilities, if I was just adding to my project the capability of use virtual device 2 with the right settings like device name, platform, version, and manufacturer, I can run on any device in the cloud. What you can see, in my cloud here is that if I was running it live, you can see here, I would have opened the iPhone, let's say here, XR within a version 14.4. This would be a virtual device that I would use in the Perfecto cloud. Same goes for an Android. I mentioned earlier that I would have selected Pixel 4 with Android 11. This is exactly what will happen. These virtual devices will be populated, and in parallel, I can obviously go to a real Android device, okay, like, I don't know, the Pixel 3 XL, which is a real device, okay, and I can run in parallel both manual and automated scripts, Espresso, XUI test, Appium, etc., on these two platforms. This is the iPhone XR as a virtual device, which is loading. This is the Google Pixel 4 virtual device that is loading. And obviously, I have a Google Pixel 3 XL, which already loaded, and I can engage with it. I can analyze all the features on this device and install the application and test it with Object Spy, location injection, and whatever you can think of. Let's see, I have also the Pixel 4 as a virtual device. Okay, you can see here, that's an emulator. You can see here, use virtual device. This is a true emulator from Android. And by the way, I can take the properties here and copy them to my Appium script in Java, JavaScript, or any other language. So this is just a snapshot of how you would work with a virtual device in parallel with real device. Last, I know that we are almost over time. This is just what I wanted to show you about the environment for reporting. This is what a CI dashboard of Perfecto looks like, where you can manage the entire pipeline, all your build acceptance testing. This is the report library, which shows you the failure reasons that I mentioned earlier. This is the AI-driven analysis, allowing you to bulk and put different failure reasons in a same bucket, like device in use, pop-up wasn't handled, element was not found, and stuff like that. And this is what drives, at the end of the day, your velocity and analysis. With that, I know that I was running a bit late. I want to stop this demo and leave time. I hope I have time at least for one or two questions. And with that, I would conclude the webinar. So back to you, Shelby. A lot of content.
Sure, yes. So our first question asks, what is your prediction around use of low or no code solutions in test automation for 2022?
Cool. It was probably asked before I was running into the Joe Colantonio comment. But I think, just to summarize my previous point, I believe that in 2022, we're going to see much more adoption of low-code, no-code, scriptless tools for web and mobile testing, including, smart reporting and analytics, which I mentioned just briefly in my demo. But yes, I think that the low-code and the no-code technologies are going to complement what we are seeing today with the code-related technologies, like at Appium and Selenium. The maturity of these tools is growing. The confidence level and trust of developers and testers in these technologies are also growing. And this is why I believe that 2022 will be the breakthrough year for the no-code, low-code technologies across multiple testing types: visual, accessibility, and functional end-to-end testing.
Great. The next question asks, if I'm using Selenium today for my web testing, should I plan on changes for 2022?
That's a great question. I think, and this is what I'm also telling a lot of my customers, which are asking me the same, right? Because everyone is exposed to the noise that is happening in the market today with Flutter and with Puppeteer and with Playwright and with Cypress. If if it's not broken, you don't need to fix anything, right? That's the rule of thumb here. I wouldn't recommend anyone to just change the technology because a new one was developed or introduced into the market. If you have a problem, try to understand if the problem is with your current framework or different reason, and act upon that. You need to have a good reason. You need to have a trigger, because switching from one framework or one technology to the other is an investment. It's not a short-term investment. It's actually a long-term investment, because you need to reshuffle everything. You need to ramp up skill set of your engineers. You need to refactor a lot of your scripts and test automation scenarios when you are moving from let's say Java Selenium to JavaScript Cypress or other language in Playwright. So try to justify it with a very business-oriented and real technical challenges that you have today, prior to switching to a technology. If you are happy with your Selenium scripts today, if you are covering to the maximum level your scripts today and it works, you're not suffering from too much flakiness, stick with Selenium up until something changes and gives you, the opportunity to rethink or evaluate a new one.
Great, and we are almost at time, but I'm going to squeeze in one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned new app types like PWA, Flutter, and APKS. What would be a good driver or opportunity to switch to such type of apps?
Great. Even though it's different from the previous question, we can connect it because you need to have a market event for you to swap, a native application to Flutter. Flutter is a full set of technologies led by Google, which are driven by Dart, which is a new language to learn, right? So there is an investment that you need to put in order to move to a new type of application like Flutter or PWA. APKS is different because APKS is not, it's a new technology, but it's a mandatory thing. So you need to pay the price regardless if you want it or not. Google is mandating you. If you want to continue delivering apps to the Google Play, you need to swap or switch to APKS format. With regards to PWA and Flutter, you need to see what's your current business model, because usually PWA and Flutter will consolidate your mobile and web and sometimes even desktop applications into a single code base. If you have today a problem to manage your mobile assets, your web assets, and your desktop application assets, and you're paying too much and you cannot control quality, you're actually suffering from quality issues, this is a good moment in time to reevaluate a new technology, which in that case would be good to look at PWA or Flutter, because this is one source code or one code base that can run across multiple channels, web, mobile, and desktop. So you're going to A, save more time on development and testing, and B, you're going to enjoy a higher end user experience, because these are very modern, rich UI-based applications, which are going to give you much more user satisfaction, and you're going to find it much easier because these are web type applications running on mobile. The deployment for or continuous delivery of these applications is going to be much easier for you than just developing a mobile application, going through Google Play, App Store, and separately doing the same way for web. So I hope I answered that. It's a very complex discussion to have, and it's not just developers and testers. You need to have the business and the product and the entire management when you're doing such a transition, because it impacts everything.
Great. Well, thank you for that great information, Eran. If we didn't get to your question, we will reach out to you afterwards via email. So thank you to our audience for your attendance and participation today. And of course, thank you to our presenter, Eran Kinsbrenner. We hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.